Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Welcome, everybody. I'm your guest host, Johnny Mantell, and I got Bruce Hart on the other line with me. How are you, Bruce, tonight?
I'm doing great, Johnny. Thanks for coming on board again tonight. I'm looking forward to tonight's show. We got one of the legendary workers from the golden age of wrestling, Don Fargo, on tonight, and it's been a long time since I spoke to Don, but always one of those really colorful, legendary characters, sort of in the same realm as the Buddy Rogers and the Ray Stevens and that lot. So I'm sure we got some fascinating stories and recollections from Don on tonight. I'm really looking forward to hooking up with him and hearing some of the stories and some of his perspectives about the business then and now and all of that. So
I think a tag team like him and Jackie Fargo they were reincarnated today in their late 20s, early 30s. They would be as over today as they were back then.
Cutting edge, and that was some of the things I'd love to hear from Don, just what he thought made a good worker back then, and a lot of those same, I think a lot of those same things apply today and have maybe been overlooked or forgotten, and I'd love to hear some of his stories about him and Jackie, and I know another of the guys that he partnered with up here in Calgary, and at that time he was just getting his feet wet in the business, was a guy named Greg Valentine, who at the time they were called the Fargos, and Greg was wrestling under the name of Johnny Fargo, and they had a pretty good little run up here in Calgary in the early 70s, and so I'd love to hear some of Don's perspectives, because Greg went on to, attain a pretty high level of stardom in the WWE.
Well, I think we're going to get to that, man, because he's on the air with us. I'm going to introduce the Hall of Famer, Don Fargo. Don, how are you tonight?
Pretty good as can be.
How are you doing? Yeah, good hearing from you. Been a long time. Yeah, been a long time. I was just sort of a young proverbial snot-nosed punk back when you were up here in the 70s there, but you made a great impression on a lot of people. I know I spoke to Greg a few times. He always had extremely high regard for you and credited you with a lot of good advice and that type of thing. And yeah, you were one of those legendary characters. There was a handful of, I mentioned some of them, like the Ray Stevenses and the Buddy Rogers and the Johnny Valentines and that lot. And
they were back in my day, and I learned a lot from Buddy Rogers, and Ray Stevens was my partner, and I learned a lot from him, and to your credit, you imparted a lot to some of the guys. I know Greg always told me he credited you with a lot of great advice, and you were a great mentor for him, and which is sort of the way it should be, But yeah, I know my dad always had very high regard for you as well. Stu always. Your dad, I can talk all day about your dad, man. I had the pleasure of meeting him in Columbus, Ohio, back in the 50s.
Wow, that goes way back. Yeah, it goes.
L he was one of the ones that hurt me.
I guess
they got great pleasure out of that,
Well, that was part of the. Johnny and I were talking about that a while back. That was sort of part of the deal back in those days. It seemed like every territory they had an old shooter or two, and you had to go kind of go through the Wilbur Needs or the Ruffy Silversteins or the
I had to go through them people that hated people like me that come in. The guys were in the 30s and 40s. That was their diehard business, which is still mine, and they didn't appreciate
guys like me with bodies getting into it too much unless you had some.
That seems, I know my dad always that was just sort of like their favorite. You know, I remember my dad had a few bodybuilder types like old Sammy Berg and some of them up here, and he seemed to take extra delight. I remember later on he had old Wayne Coleman and Billy Graham up here back in the late 60s, early 70s, and he seemed to like to have those big weightlifters and bodybuilder types.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know why he liked them. He wanted to get them down there in the dungeon and stretch them.
Yeah.
That's the first thing he said to me when I came up there. The first time I came up there, I rapped on the door, and he answered the door, and I was standing there in a tight shirt with my muscles hanging out like usual. I tried to show them off. And he said, "Oh, Colt, he got some big arms there." I knew right away what he was talking about, you know. And I told him straight out. I said, "Stu, I remember what you did to me back in the 50s. I ain't going downstairs with you."
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of those guys that came up the second time around, they sort of knew the drill, so they would they wouldn't kind of bite the bait or kind of let him.
You know what? You know, see, that's the trouble with today. You got these guys that know nothing about wrestling, and they become a promoter. And then they buy a ring, and they get guys that know nothing about wrestling. And they go out there and they make dumb, stupid things. And it makes me mad because me and all the people that have been in the business with me, we worked and wrestled hard to get where we were, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to have some kind of background.
Oh, yeah, and you guys used to, and my dad was like that, too. They used to go to, you know, great lengths to protect the business. You know, it's unthinkable for guys like my dad and them to be smartening up marks and talking about it being a work. And well, my dad hated that. He never agreed with when the WWE in their infinite wisdom chose to you know, start calling it entertainment or start acknowledging, you know. My dad hated that, and he never thought there was any justifiable excuse.
Yeah, no, well, that's when I come up with that. That's, you know, I started to where I didn't know how to register pain, so I wanted them to really hurt me. So they, of course, they enjoyed it, and I did too in a way because I was believable, and that's when I started going the hard way. I was going the hard way.
I remember there's guys like yourself and Johnny Valentine, I was told, was like that, and Buddy Rogers and guys like that.
Yeah.
You know, they dished out a few potatoes, and they invited. They didn't mind if somebody else gave them a stiff shot, you know, as long as it made the match look real, and you know, I think that's a big one of the many things that's wrong with the business today, you know, and too many of the guys.
Too much. They shouldn't call it wrestling anymore because they don't wrestle. I don't see no holds. It's all that acrobat stuff. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, I remember back in the day you know, we used to call it high spots, but I remember the old farts, and you were probably one of them, would tell the rookies, you know, if that's all they were doing was high spots. I remember the old veterans would stretch their asses and tell them, you know, a high spot is only a high spot if it's done at the right time. If you're just doing all high spots and all that other, you know, then I may as well go watch a circus or, you know, watch some ballet dancers or some crap because it's not wrestling, you know. And I think that's a big part of the problem today. You know, I've never been a big fan of the scripting and all that crap, too. I remember when I was breaking in, if you ever went up to some of the veterans and started telling them a bunch of spots you wanted to do in the ring and all like that, they would, you know, it cut me a bit of slack because I was a promoter's kid, but they always say, "Well, play it by ear," which was their way of saying, "Screw that, we'll do it my way." But yeah.
Like today, they all dress in one dress room. We used to have separate dressing rooms. We didn't see each other, and we didn't know what was going on, but we knew it's play it by ear. And we were so damn good at it. We could do it, and I play it by ear. I had 16 different gimmicks, different names, and it got away with every one of them. And,
and you had to understand how to work in order to do that. Yeah, I remember exactly like you're saying. A lot of times, I know when I went to Japan and places like that. Most times you never even meet the guy you're working with till you saw him in the ring, and you go in and
that's right.
It was pretty much all improv. You had to go out and the big part of it was making it look like it was a shoot, and you And
something else is. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, you didn't mind. You didn't mind taking a potato or getting a stiff chop or a stiff kick or whatever if it made it look real. Yeah, and it was just part of it, These days, I'm told a lot of the guys in the WWF, if somebody accidentally hits them, they're ready to sue or they're all ready to walk out.
I'll tell you something else. I've been going to some of these shows around here to sell my book and stuff, and I go in there. In the dressing room, here comes these clowns in. The first thing they want to know is who do we give our DVD to, the music, and then they go out and they set up a table, and they sell. It looks like a circus in there. They're selling stuff. They got their music and all that crap going on, and they're more worried about that than they are going out there and giving the people what they paid to see. That's
half the time on those indie shows, I see the guys coming in together that are working with each other, and and I'm kind of like, and the marks they're almost so jaded or oblivious, and I always hear the marks.
I see something really, I see something really good. I couldn't believe it, man. I went to one of these matches, and there were two guys sitting out there in the audience with their masks on. They were a masked tag team watching the matches. And sometimes the matches are going on like a good friend of mine, Dennis Gill. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Okay, me and him, we're trying to. He holds shows, and I give him some advice. But he's been in the business a long time, and he's old school. And we're trying to get together these certain guys, which I'm training, to bring back the old school wrestling, where you go in there and give them a story and then wrestle. Get some wrestling in the damn thing. You know what I mean? And no music. We didn't have music back in our day, and no selling stuff at the tables. No,
there was none of the bells and whistles back then. In fact, if you were a rookie back then and you wore a costume without maybe the veterans kind of endorsing it, or you wanted entrance music, or I remember back in the day, if you were a rookie and you're doing more than one or two high spots, usually the old farts in the dressing room would call you out and tell you're in the effing opening match. You're not supposed to do high spots. You save it for the main event. And in those days, most of the guys in the main events won't mince words with you either. They'd call you out. Some of those old farts like the Stomper and some of them, They would throw their boots against the wall and tell my dad they're leaving because the rookies already did A to Z's of high spots and there's nothing left for them to do type thing,
That's right. Especially when someone's got a finishing hold. Somebody else will go out there and use it before you use it in your own match, and that's no good.
Oh, used to be grounds for getting your ass kicked if you use somebody else's high spot, or if
you know what I wish? I wish some of these guys, like Ruffy Silverstein, your dad, Big Bill Miller, and many more of them good old shooters we used to have. I'll tell you, even Leroy McGurk, as blind as he was, he'd get a hold of you. And the worst of all is Danny Hodge.
Oh yeah, I remember my dad told me when he was breaking in New York in the 40s there with Toots Montt and them. He said if you did any, crossed any of the lines there, Toots, and they always had a few policemen, and they would. They weren't the least bit diplomatic. My dad said they'd push against the wall and a lot of times slap you around and
Yeah. Look what Luthez did. Luthez would go in the ring and he'd chest you right out. He'd slap you across the face.
Oh yeah, it was like that everywhere. I know when I went to England in the 70s, they had a few old shooters over there, like the Billy Robinson types, and same over there. My dad told me the Japs were like that, the Ricky Dozans, and they had a few policemen, and they're always half shooting. He said most of the matches, they'd see if you had any metal, they'd half stretch you, and if you didn't kind of come back on them, they would kind of chew you up and spit you out. But everyone was sort of testing everyone back then, and if you didn't kind of meet the test, you didn't last too long in the business. It was not too many guys got by without having to go through the ringer, as my dad used to call it.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, I know we're gonna get to your book here in a little bit, but Bruce and I always talk about the character of the guys that was from that era, probably that era before Bruce and I got started in the business. So, where did you get your start, and who started you? Who was the first to start you on this road?
Well, I didn't. First of all, I didn't go to school once early. I didn't hardly go to school. So they had what they called boys' clubs. I went to the boys' clubs and got in the wrestling teams there. And then somebody told me about the YMCA. I did that wrestling there. And then Mr. Pittsburgh came along. I got in a contest there, and I won Mr. Pittsburgh. And then this guy by the name of Alex Bentley called me up. I thought he was a big rib, and I was making $35 a week in the steel mills, and he told me he could get me a contract for $50 a week if I wanted to become a professional wrestler. And I told him, yes, I do, and he got me connected with Al Half, and that's when I got started back in 51, I think, 50, something like that. Yeah, Columbus, Ohio. He had people like Professor Roy Shires, Buddy Rogers, the Great Scott, Silverstein.
Ruffy Silverstein. Yeah, my dad told me that Ruffy was like the one of the policemen for Al Haft yet.
Yeah, he sure was. So was Joe Scarpello.
Yeah, I remember
Joe
those.
Scarpello was a little tiny guy, and he was actually he was the only guy that didn't hurt me. He treated me pretty good, and they didn't smarten you up, not at all. And Leaping Larry Shane's the one that really got helping me a lot. I don't know if you remember him or not.
Yeah, he was. I heard a great worker, Larry. He got killed in a car wreck.
Yeah, he was. And then a guy by the name. When this guy did this, I never. Some of the old timers never seen it because we was there standing around the ring watching it. And this guy by the name of Malvin Mercer, he come in and demonstrated a drop kick. And all the old timers, boy, they bullshit, man, But he did it, and that's first.
I remember my dad told me back in the day, one drop kick was a finish, like Argentina Rock, or Monte, or guys.
Because that Malvin Mercer, when he drop kicks you, he hit you right on the forehead. I mean, he plumb hit you, boy.
There wasn't that many guys doing it.
They called him Dropkick Malvin Mercer. I'll never forget him.
Yeah, I remember my dad used to tell me that like all those things that later on became like high spots. My dad told me they were like automatic finishes. My dad said if you did a sunset flip back in the 50s, it was always a finish. It wasn't like nowadays nobody gets pinned with the sunset, or if you did a drop kick or you did anything off the top, it was always a finish.
Well, yeah.
He said if you did like a pile driver, it was always a stretcher job. Nobody kicked out or nobody moved after that.
A lot of us got carried out on stretchers. Pile driver, that was a good move and it looked great, Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my dad told me nobody, and if anyone did kick out or get up from a pile driver,
I'll tell you what, if you got a suplex, you better not get up.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else these guys don't know. We had some rings back in them days that were hard, brother. I mean, they were like concrete. Yeah, they were like concrete, boy, I'll tell you. And especially the one Al Half had, I trained in. That thing was like, oh man, all it had was padding, but it had nothing, boy, just boom, solid.
Yeah, they didn't have very good padding either. I saw some of the ones I remember were like just carpet underlay, that bubbly rubber, and I remember you'd have to ride back 500 miles from a town, and you'd be after working in one of those rings, you'd be like dragging your ass. I was glad I was fairly young then because I could withstand it. But some of the old guys when they were up here, like Ronnie Etchison's and them, they'd be walking like they could barely get their asses out of the vehicle, after a long road trip and some of those stiff rings,
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I hurt to this day. I mean, I've had my Andre the Giant stepped on my fingers and broke them. Harley Race, well, he broke my damn ankle.
How'd Harley break your ankle, Don?
Oh, well, he got in a hole, and he went one way and I went the other. And what was funny about it, I didn't know it was fractured or broken like that, and we went Broadway, and I had to drive back, so I packed it in an ice bag. They fixed my foot in an ice bag, and I drove with my left foot. And when I got back there, I had to go to the hospital, and they told me I had a fractured ankle. I couldn't believe it, man.
The promoter probably asked you if you could work the next night, though, could you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what they did for me. I was in a cast, and they made me a manager. That's when I was wrestling for Bob Gago and them.
Probably told you you'd have to take a pay cut, too, half your wage tonight, but, hope you get well soon, Connors.
Yeah. Oh, good gosh.
Hey, I got Holden on the line tonight. I got the gentleman that helped Don write his book. I'd like to bring him in from Tennessee, Scott Teal. How you doing tonight, Scott?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, give us some perspective on the book. Is it already hit the...
Yeah, I have a list here of all the lies Don Fargo has already told in the first 25 minutes of the program.
Oh.
I still got more. I got guys calling me up that read my book and say, "Hey, you didn't put that in, Fargo." and I spent yesterday with Honky Tonk Man, and he told me all kind of stories I forgot about.
Cool.
I forgot all the stuff I did, really.
We remembered a lot of them, though. We got a lot in that book that stuff we sort of, between the two of us, we sort of remembered a lot of it and got it down on paper. Some of the stuff is we probably shouldn't put in there, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's a great read. It's funny. Don has so many great funny stories to tell, and I'm so glad we got them put down on paper and for the future, because these guys, not saying Don's going anywhere, but these guys are passing away all too quickly, and it's just unfortunately some of them we just haven't been able to get their story before they're gone, and that's a sad thing, considering what they gave to the fans of wrestling and all the entertainment they gave the people all those years.
Yeah, Stu was probably like a lot of those guys. They were always kind of kayfabing or trying to protect the business, so they didn't want to open up, or they didn't want to give anyone any inside stuff on the business being a work. Or I remember my dad apparently partook in more than a few ribs in his day, but he was always kind of reluctant to admit that he orchestrated a Mabel party, or that he was kind of behind some of the other that was a big part of the business back in the day. Don, I'm sure Don could tell you, but
absolutely.
My dad told me every territory there was a few guys that were pulling ribs, or there was some kind of mischief and whatever the hell going on the road, and it was sort of
there was ribs 24/7, ribs all the time, man.
And Don was like one of the legendary ribbers I heard, and it was like my dad used to speak in kind of reverential terms of Don and Johnny Valentine and Buddy Rogers and even Old Harley and a few of those guys that were, always some kind of, Ted Christie was another one. There's always some kind of shit going on the road,
They almost had to do those things to keep their sanity all the years, all the time on the road they spent, and just something to pass the time. It's just.
Oh yeah, and my dad told me they used to go to get pretty intricate with some of the ribs and the. I know when they did the Mabel parties, some of them didn't go as planned, and there was guys wanting to kill people and stuff like that.
Well, they got me good, but they got me good, but you got to read the book to read about it. They got me a good Mabel boy.
Don, there's a ton of stories in your book.
Let me just sneak in real quick and just ask Scott something. Scott, I know you've been a big part of a lot of books and documenting the past, and Bruce and I talk about this all the time, the quality of guys that came from the past that really passed this business on to the next generation. And of course, Don and Stu and those guys all being those kind of guys. What was it about that era and that group of men that made them that group? Because as you tell these stories, and as Don's going to tell a story here in a little bit, if you get his book and you read about the stories and stuff about being on the road and how candid Don were, we're not going to ever see that generation of wrestlers again unless something changes in the business. We're never going to see it again. So what was it about that era? You've written a number of books and with guys from that era. What was it about that group of guys? Was it the kayfabe? Was it the toughness in the ring? What was it about that group of guys?
I just think it was the fact that they were all on the road together. They were, they had no time when they're in the cars. They didn't have anything to do for 2 to 3, 4 hours every single day. All they had time to do was think up things to do. I'm sure they sit in the back or in the car thinking, when we get to the so and so arena, we ought to do this to so and so or do that to so and so. And I mean, just when you've got idle time, what they say, the devil's workshop is idle time or something like that. I think that fits the business very well. The guys in the car, they just have nothing to do but sit there and think of ribs to pull and things to do.
I remember when you'd ride in the cars back in the day, if you had a lousy match or you were dragging your ass or you weren't busting your ass in the ring and you had to get back in the van or whatever and ride back, these veterans would, they'd be all over you. And in its own way, it kind of made you become a better worker, because if you were dogging it or you were spending more time trying to chase ring rats or whatever the hell, you get some of these old hard asses, and they'd be on your case all the way back to wherever the next town or whatever. And I think that Johnny and I discussed that on previous show. That's one of the things that's missing in the business these days too. Is used to get schooled a lot in those car rides. You know, you'd be coming back 500 miles or whatever from some town, and you'd have these guys. Sometimes they'd be helping you, other times they'd be on your ass for your attitude or doing too many high spots or not kayfabing or being more concerned about whether you did a job or whatever than all that. But I remember the peer pressure was a huge factor in, kind of keeping guys from getting big egos and keeping them grounded, and I'm sure Don would tell you the same. You'd have some of those old shooters like Gordienko and Lindsay and some of those old farts, and if you got on the wrong side of them, they'd be, pretty intimidating. You don't want to, cross them or piss them off type thing. It's all part of it.
These two, they got a lot of crap from a lot of the veterans, but at the same time, they learned a lot. That's one of the things I think is missing in wrestling today. The guys don't have that time in the cars that the guys used to, and when Don would have a match early in his career, and he'd ride home with Buddy Rogers. Well, Buddy would be telling him all the things. You should try this or you should try that. I like what you did here, Don, but why don't you try to do it this way? I mean, there's so much they learned in the cars back in those days, and they just don't have that now.
No, I think at some point they need to go back to the drawing board and maybe try to find out ways to reintroduce that. I've said it before, but one of the biggest problems I see with the business these days is there's no script, there's no improv. Everything's scripted. You got giving you kind of a manual before you go up to the ring if you're in WWE, and two of these and one of those, and you do this and I do that, and it's nothing spontaneous. And I don't know how the hell the mark. I remember back in the day, and Don and I were mentioning that before, but if you came up to some veteran and told them about all these high spots you wanted, if you were a rookie, I want to do 3 of those and 2 of those, and in most cases they tell you to shove it, or if you're like the promoter's kid or whatever, like I was, they'd say, well, play it by ear, which was their way of saying screw that, or not. I don't want to do a bunch of
they don't have enough knowledge to play it by ear. That's the trouble. They can't read the other man's body. I'm talking about? They can't read it. And we didn't have that problem. If someone was reaching their arm out to grab me, well, I knew exactly what to do. Or he'd come at me with his head down, I knew what to do.
Yeah, and a big part of the improv, if you're doing it spontaneous, is you get the crowd into it because they start figuring their cheering or their booing or whatever's got something to do with it. But these days, when I see it scripted so much, the crowd after a while starts realizing that it doesn't matter whether they cheer or boo or whatever. It has nothing to do with what's going on.
When I walked out the dressing room door, I had no music. I just walked out the dressing room door. As soon as I got out there and I announced my name, the people went crazy. Boo, boo, they're screaming, hollering, throwing paper cups and everything at me. I ain't done nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I get in the ring, and I can walk around the ring and mess around with my opponent for 5-6 minutes without even getting a hold and get the people mad.
Oh, yeah, that was a big part of it. Like, my dad used to refer to all the scripting and all this artificial insemination, and my dad said you never had nobody ever had an orgasm when they were getting artificially inseminated.
I love that.
That's classic.
Well, you're telling the truth there, bro.
Yeah. And,
oh my gosh.
Some of today's superstars, I think maybe they need to have that lesson taught to them, or they need somebody at the very least to point out those things, and I'm surprised the odd time I've been down there in WWE, the kind of stuff we're talking about right now is almost oblivious. They don't even, they don't know what the hell you're even talking about. They think that you're maybe living in the past, or if you mention old school, they think it refers to wearing wool tights and 6-inch black boots and all that kind of stuff. They don't even know what you're referring to, you know, which is too damn bad, you know.
Yeah. I guess they go in the ring now. These clowns around here, they wear T-shirts and long Levi's and stuff like that because they're hiding their bodies, you know. And then some of them wear tennis shoes and stuff in the ring. And
oh yeah,
you know, it's embarrassing. Sometimes, you know, I'm sounding like your dad now.
The funny thing is, half the guys in the WWE don't wear like. Back in the day, fortunately, everyone wore the standard boots and tights, you know, maybe different color or whatever. But you never see anyone back in the day unless they were Haystacks Calhoun or some bullshit wearing, you know, coveralls and jeans and running shoes.
When I was the Dalton brothers, we wore them skin tight Levi's and had cowboy boots with wrestling soles put on and.
Yeah, but these days, you know, half the guys in the WWF are wearing, you know, sweatpants and, you know, costumes and gimmick outfits. And but I'm surprised Vinny doesn't, or Hunter or whoever, you know, do something about it. But I don't know what the hell anyone want to get started on all that.
As long as they got a good VD and a pair of shiny wrestling boots. A real fancy outfit. They're a wrestler. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to wrestle a lick.
Oh, it's funny you get to any of those indie shows, Don, or whatever. Get these guys who don't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch, but you know they all have the gimmick haircuts and they got a ballet, fake boobs, and they got you know the entrance music, and they got the costumes and crap, but you know, most of them have no idea about working, but that's almost of no consequence. You know, they got all the other crap, you know. And
well, we had them in our day, but they were Gorgeous George, but he was actually a shooter, a pistol man. You know that he could go, and he was very colorful. He's the one that brought the color into everything. And then Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and then the Great Scott. And then Jack Pfeffer, of course. Jack Pfeffer, he brought everything in with him.
That's what my dad told me. Like, he said a lot of guys didn't seem to realize it, but he said guys like Gorgeous George, Buddy Rogers, and Johnny Valentine, and guys like that were great workers. They weren't just you know, guys wearing dyeing their hair or top-notch workers.
Johnny Valentine was the best. He could just walk out of that dressing room and just stop, and they want to kill him. And he could get in the ring and just stare at the people and not even do anything. And then when he put that big hammer on you, and that was a little stiff.
I remember my dad, and he's you know, you were considered in that same category, but with guys like Rogers and Valentine, and they just work a hold, and they, you know, they didn't give a damn whether the crowd was going boring or anything. They just stay, you know, and after a while, the crowd would be eating out of their hands, and they'd build to this big climax. But they would never just do high spots for the sake of doing high spots, and they weren't all over the ring with holds and all that. It was just very systematic and kind of build to this big climax, and that was what working was like back in those days. And so many of the guys today have lost sight of it. You know, the first time some marks goes boring or whatever, they start panicking and, geez, we got to do a high spot, or we got to, you know, go out and fight on the floor. We got to pull a chair out from under the ring, or we got to, you know, do something, you know. And in the old days, you'd never see a Johnny Valentine or Buddy Rogers or yourself changing, you know, panicking when, you know, the marks are, you know, you just stick with making it look like a fight and let it build, you know. And a lot of those guys today, I think they need a lesson in that, you know. I'm not sure if they'll ever get it, but it's something I think they need.
I think the wrestling business has just changed so much. It's just never going to go back to what it was. And part of that is the fact that cable TV has just ruin kayfabe. I mean, there's just no way they could. I hear people all the time, do you think wrestling will ever go back to territories? It just never will. The TV stations won't give away TV like they used to. They want big money for what because Vince pays big money, so they're used to that now. I don't see them ever going back to the old style way. It's always going to be entertainment.
It's like the can of worms has been opened up. It's pretty hard to close it now with you got the internet.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Not me. I ain't gonna think that way because I'm gonna try. I mean, I ain't got a lot of money. I ain't got too much of anybody. I got guys that are gonna try to help me, and I'm gonna run matches, and it's gonna be like I went through Columbus, Ohio. That's what it's gonna be like. And
yeah.
I think the people will like it. I mean, if someone's going to get their eye busted open, they're going to get their eye busted open. I know guys that I'm training now who will do it in a minute.
I think it needs to. I think it needs to go back to that. I don't think anyone is going to get rich doing that, but if enough people are starting to.
But there's guys out there that got the heart. They want to do it. They just want to do it. I'm around these guys. Hey, I just want to do it. Help me, Fargo. Help me. I want to do it.
Back in the day, probably around the time when you were breaking into the business, but my dad told me back in the late 40s, early 50s, the Jack Pfeffers and all those guys, the business started going overboard on gimmicks and bullshit, and there was all kinds of exposés and all this kind of stuff, and my dad said, the business was kind of in a pretty rough state, and then he said a bunch of the promoters, himself included, and the workers started, saying we got to go back to square one here. You got to reestablish wrestling, and it took a while, but they kind of did that, and I think the same thing needs to happen today. I don't know that there's, it's a lot of the things that you mentioned are a big impediment with the cable TV and just the smart mark mentality and all like that. But I think the bottom line is the fans themselves, they actually want to indulge. That's the biggest reason I've always felt why this UFC and all MMA and all that stuff got over. And I think it's as much of a work as wrestling myself.
It is. I know a guy down there that has a school. He wrestled quite a bit before he did. He wrestled before he did that. He runs a school with it, and he has matches like we do with wrestling.
I know my dad had.
Let me sneak in and just say it's Hart. You're listening to Heartbeat Radio, and Scott, I have to agree and disagree with you. I understand what you're saying about the TV, and I understand about the internet and the modern era and all that stuff's going on today. But I know when we go to indie shows here in the area, fans still walk up to me at the end of the night and would say, God, we wish real wrestling would come back. God, we wish real wrestling would come back. And I think for that reason, maybe not a major territory or maybe not a world-beating territory or somebody that's going to challenge what Vince is doing now in all the big buildings. But I think there is a place right now in the wrestling business for that kind of situation to start up and create stars of the future. They can't take anybody from the past. And then when I say the past, I'm talking about off-cast from Vince. They won't be able to take any of those guys, but they're going to take new, young people and create stars of the future in a smaller territory where the people do believe in what they're doing and they're not.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, it's going to go back to the day where, like Bruce, the Jack Pfeffers and the Don Fargos and the Fritz or the Johnny Valentines, those kind of guys, they'd go to the ring and the people started yelling boring. That'd make them sit in the middle of the ring that much longer. Where today, if that happens, they got to jump right up and get something in to try to change what the people are telling them what to do, where the wrestling of the past, the promotion and the wrestling told the people how to do.
That's going to be the name of our thing. It's going to be called Retco Wrestling, the hard way.
Yeah.
I think we're going to try to get sponsored by NWA.
I think that any new promotion today, one of the things they need to be doing is going back to old school. The biggest mistake with all these indie promotions and stuff today. They're all trying to be a half-assed copy of Vince's.
We got a nice little territory. We got a nice little territory down here: Mobile, Pensacola, Dothan, Alabama, Georgia. I mean, that's a little. I mean, hell, that's a little territory right there.
Any of the boys are seeking a big guarantee or anything these days? It's a different.
Hey, I see these guys wrestling for nothing. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just to be in the ring, they'll wrestle for nothing. I don't want to do something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of gone back to that for the love of the sport. They got to kind of do it because they want to do it, and it's like Johnny was saying. I think they need to just go out there and try to work and try not to be a second coming of John Cena or trying to copy The Rock or anything. Just go out there and be themselves and put in some time and hopefully learn a bit about ring psychology and how to work a crowd. And
well, you hit it right there, ring psychology. That's what it's all about.
And there's not enough of that out there anymore. Some of the stars in the WWE with ring psychology is they say, what? What are you talking about?
You sure as hell can't get it watching TV wrestling matches. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, it's terrible.
Hey, Scott, I got two questions for Scott Teal. Scott, this is Johnny Mantell. First off, how's the missus doing? And second off, give everybody the information on getting Don's book.
Okay. Angela's doing much better. She's been doing her therapy. For those who don't know, she broke her shoulder 2 weeks before our reunion that we have here every year, and we had to cancel that. And she actually separated the arm from the shoulder socket, and so she's been had surgery, and she's doing much better now. She's doing therapy and has good days, bad days with the therapy, but she's gotten where she can use her arm. Some she can't lift it all the way up, but she's doing a whole lot better. And I appreciate you asking. As far as the book goes, you can go get it at crowbarpress.com, and it's available now for $22.95. And we order it directly from the website using PayPal. You can also order it by mail if you want with cash, check, or money order. The book is filled with just great classic stories of Fargo, and I always have to tell everybody, you're going to read some of these stories and you're going to say, there's no way that happened. But I'm telling you, everything in that book actually happened.
What's the title of the book, Scott?
It's called The Hard Way.
Oh, that's a good title.
Yeah, because that's what Don did a lot of. He was a believer in making things look realistic, and instead of doing it the easy way that a lot of guys did, he did it the hard way, where guys use their knuckles to bust him open.
Yeah.
He's sort of Johnny Valentine in that respect, and a lot of people say he got off on it, but I don't know for sure.
Sort of a thin line between, kind of pleasure and pain or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, boy.
Oh, that's good. I'll definitely have to check that out online or whatever. I check it out because, when I was just breaking into the business, I remember, as I said before, Don was up here, and he was like a great mentor to a lot of the guys who were up here back in those days, including Greg Valentine. There was quite a few others that kind of, had a lot of respect for him. He was considered like one of those legendary old workers, like in the same vein as Valentine and Harley and Ray Stevens and some of those guys. So, he was held in high respect. And I know my dad always had very high regard for Don and admired him in and out of the ring. He was sort of like one of those characters who, kind of added a lot of flavor to the business. There's not enough of those types of guys in the business today, that are like real genuine characters that, stories are told about. And, I remember back in the day on the territories, everyone used to talk about, and there was always names that came up, and Don's was always one of them, guys like Buddy Rogers or Johnny Valentine or Harley and Terry Funk, some of those guys. But those guys are still legends, and Don too, so. And,
when I first got up there to wrestle for your dad, he told me that, for me, it was in the wintertime. He told me to make sure I get a flashlight and some candles And I thought he was ribbing me, but I asked somebody what it was about, and they said the flashlights to stick out the window, motion for help, and the candles you light them to keep warm. And I said, from what? He said, sometimes the snow comes down off of the mountains and hills and covers your car up. But to this day, I don't know if he was telling the truth or not, but I got a flashlight and candles.
Oh, yeah, it was like 30, 40 below up here quite often.
I know. I like to see some of these guys. You know what? When we wrestled in them ice hockey places, and all they did was put something down over the ice, and it was cold as hell in there, man. I mean, we had to wear jackets. When you took a bump in that cold arena, you felt it.
I remember the steam would come off your body, and the fans would all be huddled up, and it was on an ice hockey rink, and there's just a few boards with the ring was on it.
You couldn't break a sweat.
I think it was like 40 below outside. It was even colder inside. You know, there's no heat in the buildings.
I know the building didn't have no heat either.
Yeah. Quite often they didn't have any hot water or anything. But
you know what? They drew crowds. They still drew crowds.
Yeah. That was a lot of today's guys think you're bullshitting or ribbing them when you tell them stories like that. It was, the way it was back then,
Yeah, I've seen some of the snowstorms, believe me, boy.
Wow. Hey, Scott, Kay and I want to send our love to you and Angela, and I hope she gets healed up and well soon. And thanks for coming on tonight and giving us a little perspective on Don, and just give us sort of a on-the-way-out little story from us, please.
Story, I'm lost. Story of what?
Oh, just something about Don and doing the book, something you gathered or got from doing the book.
Well, I guess the biggest thing would be, Don is probably the first wrestler to ever write a book who can't read and write.
And that's the truth.
He can't read and write. Here's a good story for you. He was over at the house. He was over at the house one day, and I had a picture of him and Jim Dalton as the Dalton brothers. And I said, Don, I'd like you to sign this picture for me. He said, okay. And he starts, just before he started writing, I said, no, I want you to sign it Jack Dalton. I don't want you to sign it Don Fargo. He says, okay. And he stopped and looked back at me. He says, how do you spell Dalton? No lie. That's the truth.
Well, I still do that when I sign my book. When I go to these book signings and stuff, when I sign my book, I have to ask the person how to spell their name. I just can't do it. And I can't. I know the days and the months, but I don't know what order they're in. My dad always told me stuff like that don't matter. Just like birthday, we never celebrate a birthday or nothing.
I'll tell you why you're still so young, Don.
Yeah, probably. And he told me too, don't hang around nobody old. So I try to hang around young people all the time.
Before I go, I was just going to say, Bruce, I apologize. I haven't read your book yet. It's still available, right?
Yeah. Straight from the Heart. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of covered I'll maybe get your address off the air or something. I can maybe try to send you a copy or something.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. Yeah, Johnny has it if you need, but I'd be more than happy to buy a copy. I just haven't gotten around to it. I read about 2 books a year because every chance I've got to, where I can sit down and just relax and do something like that, I'm working on my own book, so I don't have a lot of chance to read, but I would like to add this to it.
I'll pass that address on to him, Scott.
What are some of the other books you've got, you've written, Scott? Maybe if you can mention them, I'm sure some of the listeners might want.
I've written books with Ole Anderson, J.J. Dillon, Jody Hamilton, Ivan Koloff, about Gordon Soley, Tony Atlas, Bill DeMott. Redid the Lou Thez book, Stan Hansen, Jack Briscoe, Dean Burstone, Nikita Koloff. And
you have a website or something, Scott, that listeners can go to?
At crowbarpress.com. And it has all my stuff there. And I was going to tell you, Johnny, if you'll send me Bruce's address, I'll send him a couple books as well. I've got one that you'd enjoy. I did a interview with your dad years ago, and it's it covered 2 issues. You may have seen it. It's called Whatever Happened To, and it was a pretty in-depth interview. I wish I could have done more, but it was really good, and I'd love to send you a copy of those.
I'd love to see it. I know many of those names you mentioned started up here, were up here early in their careers, including Old Holy, who was wrestling under the name of Rock Rogowski at that time, and quite a few of those other names you mentioned. I remember seeing them up here early on in their careers. So old Ivan Koloff and some of those guys, they were all guys who kind of got their feet wet up here. So I'd love to read some of their stories, and those are some legendary guys. Even like old Lou, I remember sitting in the back seat of the car, and my dad and Lou Thez would be commiserating, and it's fascinating to hear all the stories from way back in the 30s. The screw jobs and the potato artists, and the swervers and the rips, and
your dad had great stories. Every time I called him, he just rattled one story off after another. I mean, they were so good. And every time I called, the last time I talked to him, I called him, and he started talking as soon as I said hello and told him who I was. He talked for a half hour, and I never got a word in edgewise. And he says, "Wait a minute, that doorbell ringing." So he put the phone down, and next thing I know, your mother picks up, and she says, "Hello?" And I said, "Hi, this is Scott Teal." She says, "You poor thing." Talk about it. I'll never forget her saying that to me. You poor thing.
Yeah, she was always cutting Stu off. If Stu got on a roll, and I remember back in those days, a long distance call, it was like costing like $3 a minute or something like that.
Yeah. Bless her heart. That was so funny. I'll never forget that. Wow. But thank y'all for having me on, and go ahead.
Yeah, I'll look forward to reading those, and I'll get you a copy of the Straight from the Heart, and I'll look forward to reading some of your stories. Those are some legendary people you mentioned, so it should be fascinating to hear some of the the straight goods from some of those guys.
Absolutely. Well, good deal. Well, I appreciate it. Thank y'all very much.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Take care.
I sure will. Thank y'all. Bye, Johnny. Bye, Don.
All right. Scott Teal, writer of Don's book. You heard so many others. That's Crowbar Press. You can get all the information on his books and go right on. I'm going to go to the phone lines. I got another caller calling in tonight to say hello to Don Fargo and everybody. This is Ken Jurgen. Lord Zoltan, how are you tonight?
Good. How you guys all doing up there?
Great, Ken. Nice to hear from you, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's nice to finally make it on with you guys. It's interesting listening to all the stories on Don there. So he's originally from Pittsburgh. That's where I'm from, and he really never worked here much in Pittsburgh till he teamed up with Greg Valentine. And I always wondered why he left.
That was the big thing when I was there with Greg.
Yeah, why did you never?
I had my first match there. When I first started wrestling in Pittsburgh, and then I never wrestled there again till me and Greg. But I wrestled Allentown. Remember that?
What, in the middle of the state, or?
Allentown. They ran some shows there, and I was wrestling there too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just remember when you were here with Greg, and I know because I used to talk to your mother. You're originally from Crafton, Carnegie area?
You missed it, Ingram.
Ingram. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
in that area.
We drove down from Buffalo, great for that show.
Yeah. Yeah, and you always had more success outside of the Pittsburgh area than you did, right in here in Pittsburgh, with all the different tag teams. I mean, you were successful in every tag team, you did. You're the king of the tag teams.
Thank you. I had a lot of good tag partners, man.
Who are some of your partners, Don? Maybe some of the I could fill some listeners.
To start off, it was Ray Stevens, and then it was Dickie Steinborn, And
oh yeah,
and then there was of course Greg, Jackie, Jim Dalton. Oh, Jim Dalton. Listen to me calling Jim Dalton. Jim, I don't remember his last name. It was Baggett or something. And then there was Chris Colt, of course.
Well,
what happened to poor old Kenny Mack? He was one of my best. I lost him, and then I went back to singles.
Those are some legendary guys,
also the French Foreign Legion. That was Jacques Goulet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were the French Foreign Legion.
How did you hook up with Greg Valentine? Did you know Johnny before that, or?
No, I met him in I think it was in Detroit. I think the office told me to pick him up at a hotel or something. And I picked him up, and that's how I got to know him. And then I went away for a while and come back, and he was still doing stuff and not as good. So I made him my valet. We called him Babyface Nelson. And
oh yeah,
he was my valet. Yeah, he was my valet. And after that, we just decided to tag up and call ourselves the Fargo Brothers. And it clicked. It really it clicked.
Oh yeah.
It clicked, boy, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you guys were a good tandem up here. I know my dad, had very high regard for you, and then I sort of lost track of Greg for a while there, and would have been about 8 years later or 10 years later, he was with Beefcake, Beefcake,
Well, when me and him was in Amarillo together, we were doing good, and he got a good break. North Carolina, his daddy got hurt, and they wanted somebody up there, and I think he went up and tagged up with Ric Flair. I think that's yeah.
Didn't you team with Hank James too down in Amarillo, or doing it?
Hank James, yeah, sure did.
Yeah, I remember that office there. You did a little bit of work, tag team together.
When were you in Amarillo, Don? Was that like early 70s? Or?
Yeah, that was, I had...
Sweet Hansen and Park, and
I had Dory. Dory had his first match there in Amarillo. I'd go down and work out with him and stuff. And Terry was there. And Terry wasn't in the business yet. Terry, you know how he is. Wow.
Yeah.
He wants to get in the ring, boy. He kept asking his dad, I want to get in the ring. Let me do that. I can do that, And he said, no. But, Terry, he's a wild man, boy. It's funny because Junior is mellow,
Yeah.
And
pretty
Terry
laid back.
Hell, Terry will tear your freaking head off,
Yeah.
Like one time, Dory Funk come in here, Junior come in here, the world's heavyweight champion down here in Pensacola, Mobile, and they booked me with him because I was under a mask as Mr. D because I got disqualified everywhere, and I put the mask on. And if anybody could unmask me, I'd be thrown out of the territory, and that was the idea. They told him to beat me, and he refused. He said, I ain't going to do that. He's your main man. He said, I'll carry him for an hour. He asked me if I could wrestle an hour. I said, yeah. And that's what we did. He wrestled a whole hour, boy. You don't see that much anymore.
No, and he used to be a master at that. He'd build it to a climax, and people would be on the edge of their seats heading into the home stretch, and you don't see anything like that these days.
And he was strictly wrestling. That's what I liked.
Yeah, you never saw any gimmicks. Very few high spots.
I was scared to death one time. I was a young kid, and Lou Fez, they booked me with him in Oklahoma. And I didn't know what to do. Buddy Rogers was one of my best friends. He taught me everything I knew and gave me ring experience and education. And I called and asked him. I said, well, what should I do? And he gave me some advice. He said, don't wear no fancy jackets. He said, just put a towel around your neck and go in there and don't try to show off. He said, you'll be all right. So he was right. I didn't get slapped by Fez, and he made me look pretty good until he squashed me. But I like him because them old timers were older than me, and I kind of respect them because when they were beating me, they would let me know. They would hurt me. Like if someone beat me with a leg scissor, a hold like that, I knew it. I mean, they just wanted to show me that they were top dog. I don't know if you ever got that or not, but I got it a lot. I guess I got it on account of my attitude. I had that Buddy Rogers, hey, pally, cocky attitude, you know. It rubbed off on me bad.
Well, the very fact that those guys, you know, even worked with you, it's a feather in your hat, because I was told if they didn't like you or they didn't respect you, they'd chew you up and spit you out and tell the promoter to book me with that punk.
And a lot of the boys in the dressing room knew what was going to happen. They'd all go out there and watch it.
Oh yeah, they'd all have their faces against the curtain, you know, peeking in.
Yeah.
See if you're going to get stretched in the ring tonight, or.
Yeah. I remember one time I got stretched so bad, I was wearing them wrestling cowboy boots I had on, and boy, the guy, he rode me and wouldn't let me up, and I was trying my best, and Tom Drake was a referee. You know, he's an old-timer, and he was telling me, get up out here, get up, do this, do that. I couldn't move out. Finally, I got to the ropes and called on it. Under the ring, and I had to puke, so I took my boot off and puked in my boot, boy. That's how hard I got rode.
Yeah, there's not enough of that today. I think they'd probably be, you know, good at keeping some of the things in perspective.
You ain't kidding, because, you know, you're going to find out you ain't so tough and you ain't so bad, man. But I tell you, wrestling's been my whole, since I've been in my whole life, and I still love it.
Which are some of your favorite territories to work, Don? What were some of the places you had the most fun or you enjoyed it the most?
Oh, Australia for number one. Barnett and Lewin.
Oh, yeah. King Curtis, was he there too?
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, Abdul the Butcher was there.
They had a pretty good run back there, I heard, you know. I know.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, Big Bad John was there.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Big Bad John, yeah. He had his arm.
Wild entourage, Big Bad John, Blackjack Slade, maybe, and Curtis and Mark, and a few others. I remember my dad had them up here for a stretch. Every night, there blood all over the place, and, you know, it was... you know, long before ECW and all the, you know, it's like extremism to the max with the blood and the all the other. I think Abby was up here at that time too. It was like I think everyone had blades taped to their fingers. It's like it ain't, you know, some kind of one of those B-grade horror movies with blood and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. And my other favorite one was Houston, Texas, when we were there as the Dalton brothers, the Dirty Dalton gang. We did great there, and I loved it there. And
what time period was that?
Huh?
What time periods were those?
The Dalton brothers were in the middle 60s.
That was long before Fritz and them took over.
Yeah, long before.
That was Ed McLemore and Morris Siegel and that bunch.
Yeah, Morris Siegel and that bunch. Yeah, Paul Bosch.
Yeah, I was gonna say Paul Bosch, Houston.
Who was the? What guys did you work with down there, Don, in those days?
There was the Kozak brothers. There was Bull Curry. Remember him?
Oh yeah, the old potato artist.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh man, it
was El Medico and some of those guys are.
Yeah. They were there. Some of the guys the Hines brothers.
Danny McShane.
Tiny Hines brothers. Yeah, they were there. And
did you work with Tiger Conway at that time?
Yeah.
At that time. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with Tiger. Yeah.
Bronco Lubitsch or.
Yeah.
Danny
And it was Danny McShane.
Yeah, Danny McShane was kind of one of those old hardcore.
Yeah, but he was mostly refereeing then.
He must have been on the twilight of his career, I guess, around that time. Old Danny, but I remember my dad talking about those guys.
Yeah.
You know, he had a lot of respect for them. Who was in Frisco when you worked there, Don?
I was there.
The Shires.
Charles was the promoter. Yeah, Ray Stevens. They wanted me to tag up with Ray, and I should have, but I didn't because I had my partner there. I wasn't going to turn him down.
Pat Patterson, was he there then, or? Yeah,
Pat Patterson was there. Pepper Gomez, a couple other guys. I just can't place their names. I see their faces right looking at me.
Was Killer Buddy Austin around in those days? Or?
Buddy Austin?
Yeah.
Killer? Oh, man. Yeah. As a matter of fact, me and Buddy did something on TV that nobody ever did. We went into, they brought the Becker brothers. Remember them?
Yeah.
Becker brothers brought us into North Carolina to go against...
George and Bobby Becker.
Yeah, they went against the main boys, the Crockett guys, and that had his own little, they were outlawing them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he got me and Buddy Austin on TV, and I said, Buddy, let's do something different. I said, I'm going to reach over and slap you in the face. He punched me right in the eye and bust my eye open. He did it. He reached right across and busted my eye open on TV. I bled like a hog, boy. Boy, they got phone calls, ticket sales, and everything. So they sent a stooge over to see us, told us they'd give us $1,000 and get us booked if we left the territory. So of course we did. That's when we went to Buffalo, and when we got in Buffalo, they got rid of Killer, and because he was causing too much trouble, And me and Hammer, we got together again.
That was
quite a character.
Those are some sort of legendary old names, Roy Shires and
Roy Shires, and I met Roy Shires in Columbus, Ohio, and I looked up to him, because I was just a beginner. And
my dad told me he knew him back. He called himself the Silver Streak or some shit back then. Or
Yeah. They had everybody's pictures in that office down there.
Did he just branch? Did Roy Shires just branch to San Francisco and start that promotion out there, or was it somebody before he was there?
Somebody had it before he.
Somebody had it before. An old guy named Joe Malkowicz in there, and
yeah. And
somebody told me, I didn't know whether it was true or not, that Roy screwed Malkowicz or some shit like that. But Malkowicz had been in there since the 40s, it was one of those old cronies of human.
I went out to L.A. and worked for the Bell brothers. I mean, the Bells, remember them?
Yep.
There's a lot of shit going on there, too, with old Mike LaBelle and Kel Eaton and all that shit, from what I heard.
Yeah. I went out there and I wrestled as Fonzo Fargo. That's when the Fonz was hot on TV, but I called myself Fonzarella Fargo.
I never heard that one before. That was.
Oh no! I'll tell you a good one was I was when I was working in Buffalo as the Fargo brothers. Abdullah the Butcher, the young kid that helped run the show, he wanted me to be the Butcher's manager. So I had to disguise myself. So I wrapped my face all up in wrappings, wore sunglasses like a mummy. I mean, like an invisible man. And I got a shoe built up where I was crippled. And I got one of them things you put in your throat that people have to talk through, they like that. It's disguised my voice. Yeah, and it got over it. And I go back, change my clothes, and get cleaned up and go on the main event as the Fargo brothers. Nobody ever found out. Well, they know now.
Who was Pedro in there at that time, or?
Yeah, Pedro
Martinez.
Yeah. We like to drove him crazy. Ernie Ladd was there then, and
that was a pretty good territory. I heard back in the 60s. With I think Fritz was in there for a stretch, and before he ever went back to Dallas, and
a lot of big names come in and out of there.
Johnny Morant, and I'm trying to remember.
They made me and Johnny their tag team champions there. And then we wrestled Bruno and Dominic DiNucci a lot in Pittsburgh, because that's where they were from.
That's about as good as it gets in Pittsburgh. Those are sort of legendary guys.
Yeah.
Did you ever work WWF back in the day, or with Vince Senior, or any of that, or?
You mean the old man or the kid?
Oh, the old man. Did you work WWF back in the 70s, 60s, 70s?
Yeah, that's when me, Jackie, Argentino Rocco, and Manuel Perez, that's when we sold the Garden out in 1956, I think it was, yeah.
Well, that's you must run into that other old legendary character, Dr. Jerry Graham. Was he there?
Well, we had Bobby Davis with us, and make a long story short, Jackie, when I went out of town, Jackie fired him, and I taught Bobby. Buddy Rogers helped teach him, and I taught him. He was smart. He He just went and got the good Dr. Jerry and Eddie Graham and brought them into New York to take our place, and they got rid of us. And I just said, Jackie, that was a big screw up. Where are we going to go now? He said, well, we'll head to Tennessee. I said, where the heck is Nashville? I didn't know nothing about it. He took me from a great city down to the Hook woods, boy, I'll tell you.
How did that go? He became sort of legendary. Like Jackie Fargo was there for years. Like there must have been Nick Goulis and Roy Welch in that bunch.
Oh my gosh, yeah, boy. That you just mentioned Nick Goulis, everybody.
Oh yeah, he was sort of legendary for all the wrong reasons, from what I heard.
Yeah, he sure was, brother.
Everyone was talking about him.
He got me in a lot of trouble. I don't want to talk about it because it's in my book, but he got me in a mess. I found out it was him that did it.
Yeah, I never heard too many guys ever speaking in glowing terms of Nick Goulis for whatever reason. I don't recall him saying, "Well, he's a great guy," or you know.
Yeah, you just mention his name and you're going to get.
Yeah, I don't know the other guy. I didn't hear as much bad about old Roy Welch. Whether he was, he seemed to be the patriarch of a bunch.
Yeah,
of
well, he was the good cop, and the other one was the bad one.
Yeah, I never heard anything good about Nick. You know, always and his kid, I never heard much good about either. You know, Daddy says go down or whatever.
Yeah. And they had their crew of shooters down there too, you know, just in case.
Hey, I hear you say all these Tennessee names. How about Len Rossi, Don? Did you work with him?
Oh God, yeah, Len Rossi. See, when me and Jackie come in, when we come down from New York, Nick kept us off of TV. Put us on TV first, you know, and for a while we didn't work the house shows, just put us on TV. And then he asked us, do we know anybody that we could get that was a good wrestler, could do all kind of stuff. And we knew Len from New York, so we got Len Rossi, and they brought Len Rossi in, and they brought him in, and he didn't even have a suit to wear on TV. You know, he had to dress up back then. And Buddy Rogers gave me a pink suit, and I gave it to him to wear on TV. He wore it. And Jackie was in the middle of the ring bragging and talking and all that stuff, and he come running through the building with that suit on and jumped over the top ropes and drop kicked Jackie, drop kicked me, drop kicked us to death. We went out of the ring, and bingo, Len Rossi was over like a champ. Yeah,
he was had a long run in there.
Yeah, he's still there. He's got a health food store. He runs like health food, and
yeah.
He's as old as I am, and. No, he's a little younger than me, but he looks good. He takes care of himself. I seen him a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember hearing for years that was a legendary, one of the top faces in the business back for 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, you know.
Yeah. A lot of them just stayed there and faded away and got jobs and stuff like that, you know. They had the Green Island, Don Green was there, the Von Brauners, the Saul Weintraub.
And I guess Ken Lucas, you had many bouts with Ken Lucas there?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Ken, yeah. Oh, man. God bless his heart. Him and there was the Corsican brothers.
Yeah.
They were big there. And then, of course, a lot of old-timers out of the 40s and that, they had some bars. You know, they owned bars, you know. That's the first thing a wrestler, when he quits, he gets a bar.
Wow.
Was Lawler ever around there back then? Was he just breaking in, or was that before his era?
Len? No, he wrestled up in New York. He wrestled in New York when we was up there. He didn't wrestle the Garden that night.
Jerry Jarrett, or was he in there back in those days, or was that before his stretch?
Who's that?
Jerry Jarrett.
Jerry Jarrett,
Jeff Jarrett's dad.
His mother worked in the office.
Wow.
For Nick, yeah.
Hey, Ken, are you still there, man? Are you just sitting back listening to this like I am?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying all the old history here.
You
don't hear anything like this anymore. I mean, nobody has the stories. There's nothing current is interesting anymore. It's everything from years ago, that's interesting.
Well, that's what I try to put in my. That's what I try to put in my book. All very interesting, unusual things that people would not believe that actually happened. Really.
And I threw the question at Scott Till earlier, and I really don't mean it as a question. I guess I mean it more as a statement about the times. The times of this wrestling business being 2,000 or 3,000 miles a week on the road and traveling from town to town and healing hotel rooms and having baloney blowouts for real, and those kind of things have sort of ended. And as Bruce and I have said, we sort of feel like those times has really been part of the progression of changing the business, because the young guys that want to get started today don't get the opportunities to travel and to talk and to be ribbed and to be part of a rib and then try to rib somebody back. They don't get the full education of the wrestling business as we did coming in. And again, I know I was at the tail end of it in the late 70s, but you still got that. I mean, myself traveling with Peter Maivia or Killer Carl Cox, or the different guys that I got to travel with on the road that were the rib guys, but they were the main event, but they were at the end of their careers. They were passing that knowledge on, and I just think that today one of the things, and again, Bruce and I talk about this all the time, but one of the things that separates today from 30 years ago are those lessons that we learned, maybe not in the ring, but being scolded by a vet because the match we had that night wasn't up to par, or being talked to about our interview that we weren't prepared for, and how to prepare for it and how to do it properly. Those things were all lessons that we learned along the way, and I think a lot of the guys today don't get that anymore. I know Don's trying to do it down there, and I know Bruce is doing it through his school there, and I know Kay and I try to do it here with our little clinics and stuff for the guys to come up and try to learn the business that old way, that I don't know if you want to call it respectful, if you want to call it knowledgeable, whatever you want to use that adjective there to describe that. Just pass this business on the way it was meant to be passed on, because I don't think it's being passed on anymore in a way to treat it right.
These kids don't have respect for it, because they come to the matches in T-shirts, old Levi's, torn knees, and walk to the front door, and people see them. And then they mingle with the people. In other words, they look like they're part of the crowd. And I tell them that in the dressing room, when I see them, when I go to these shows, I say, hey, you guys ought to buy a ticket and sit out there with them, because you guys don't look like wrestlers to me. I tell them that, man, I don't care, because in my business you're hurting, and still, I get so mad about it.
You have people running the shows that never worked in the business.
Yeah,
and
that's it. That's it.
Trying to be the promoters now, and how can they give advice when they've never experienced anything?
You know what I say? You know what I say to people all the time when they say that, Ken, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is the fact that I tell these young guys today, if you're the smartest guy in the dressing room, if you're the smartest guy to this business in the dressing room, you're in the wrong dressing room, because you need to be in a dressing room with guys that are all smarter than you are, so you can learn. If you're the smartest guy there and you've only had 20 matches in your career, you're in the wrong place for you to get any better in this business, because there's nobody there that can help you. And I don't mean that to be tacky. You're telling the truth. Because if you're not in a dressing room, there's guys there that have years of knowledge to help you get better, improve, whether it's just the littlest thing, and there's a lot of great kids out there. I'm not taking anything away from the kids of today. There's a lot of great kids out there that have a passion and a real desire to be in this business. But there's a few things they're not doing right that would make a complete difference in their work, yet they're not putting themselves in those positions to get that knowledge. And it's a dirty shame, because that's really what's missing. Again, Bruce and I talk about it all the time, but that's what's missing today, is that little bit of that passed on knowledge that the guys aren't getting today, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think WWE or whatever, that they need to be spending more time endeavoring to instill that in there, and they're not. They're taking whoever they're breaking in. They should actually send those guys out on the road. Like back in the day, I remember Vern or Crockett or guys would send guys up to my dad to break in, and they'd go back a year or two later and they'd be a finished product. But they got these guys that they're maybe breaking in down in like Dusty's school or some bullshit like that, but there's not any transition period where they get sent to a territory for a year or two and do the road trips and work heel and work face and do jobs and put in time and do all that stuff, and then they'd be ready to go to WWE. They got all these guys that muscle heads or whatever else, and they bring them in and push them a bit, and after a while, it becomes pretty obvious they don't know how to work, and then they just sort of let them go. But there's not any real place where you learn the business and learn to respect the business and pick the brains of the veterans and ride around on the road trips, which is where he used to learn a lot of stuff on the road. But there's no places for that, and that's one reason why I see all the time WWE bringing these guys in, and they go to give them a big push, and then a few months later they've disappeared or dropped out of sight, and it's not their fault either. It's like taking a football player who's gets all the big hype but has never actually played any ball, and that and then when they aren't the superstars that they've been made out to, then they make out like it's their fault.
Well, you know what? I made a trip one time. I was going to sell my book along to Georgia, and I went with these two guys. There was three of them, and I had to sit up front, of course. And on the way back, man, it was completely boring, getting on my nerves, So they were sleeping, and the other guy was driving was yawning, and so I just pulled a Fargo, man. I wound the window down, opened the door, and leaned over the window and door and swung the door open where I was outside just flying in the air like to freak them out, man. He almost threw me off by hitting the brakes and slowing down to stop. And they told the guy they don't want to drive him. They don't want to haul me no more. But they were lucky because I didn't take my clothes off. I told him, I said, you guys, you don't know it, but I can climb on top of this car and you go as fast as you want to, and I'll get up there and I won't have no clothes on, and you really embarrass you.
Hey, I got to sneak in. We got about 25 minutes left in the show, and I have one more gentleman that wants to come on tonight with us before we start saying our goodbyes. I know he's been listening a while. Bob Brooks, you're on with Don Fargo and Bruce Hart. How are you?
All right. How's everybody doing tonight?
Hey, Bob. How are you?
Have you on? Yeah, thanks for calling in.
Not a problem, Bruce. And, I gotta say a quick hello out there to Lord Zoltan. We go back a long way, and of course over at CAC. So always good.
Yeah, we don't see each other as much as we should.
That's right. We're not that far away. I guess about 1,000 miles, but sometimes it just seems like we're at the other end of the universe. But we'll go get together over at CAC.
Oh yeah, good times down there.
Oh man, yeah. And I'll tell you, Don, Bruce and I were talking earlier today, and I said, I've got to hit him up about the Dick the Bruiser days, and wrestling, Yukon Moose Cholak and guys like that. And I don't want to try and put you on a spot or anything, but I mean, how did you feel that the wrestling compared, working for Dick the Bruiser, and out of Indianapolis and, the Chicago area? Because I know, in Chicago you went back to the 60s, against Bruiser and Crusher, and Moose Cholak, and then of course later on with Rene Goulet, as Private Don Fargo.
Yeah.
How did you feel about those days? I mean, as far as compared to like Bruce is talking about, the East Coast and so forth.
Yeah, well, working for Dick was great because I'm the type of guy I'll do anything Dick would tell me to do, and he liked that. But Wilbur Snyder, he didn't care for us. That's when he was a chain guy. He just didn't care for us. But Bruiser, he loved us because we would do anything. He liked that, Dick was wild. You know how wild he was, boy.
Yeah.
And we had such a great tag team, and it was great wrestling. There really was. But Wilbur was always on our case because we was always in trouble.
Dan, I mean, I think everything was put together well here. I mean, when you look at the announcers, I mean, like going back to Sam Menaker. And some of the great referees. Matter of fact, Dick the Bruiser's son-in-law, Scott Romer, and I we talk about that all the time. Connie Marker, Johnny Shorn. some of the great referees out of Indianapolis, Mike Figueroa out of Chicago, and when you put it all together, I mean, it was just things just fell into place. It wasn't I promoted in the late '80s afterward, the post Bob Luce kind of era. But Bob Luce, I mean, was a great television promoter, and like I say, you put him and Sam Menaker, and you got guys like yourself, and Dick the Bruiser. I mean, how can you go wrong?
I know Bob Luce was good, boy. He was he could write some stories, and he could really talk. And, that's when Bobby Heenan was there. Bobby Heenan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Bobby Heenan was a manager, and he did a lot of stuff for the Bruiser. He was Bruiser's hang around, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. He did a lot of work outside of wrestling.
I know he did. He cut his grass.
Paul Christie and I always talked about that. Matter of fact,
cut his grass, washed his car.
Yeah. I'll probably be talking to Paul Christie here tomorrow or next couple of days here, and I'll let him know you said hello too. By the way.
Oh, okay. Oh, Paul?
Yeah. He's up in living up in Michigan.
How's he feeling?
What, his health hasn't been the greatest over the last couple of years. But I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, and he over the phone he sounded really, a lot better. So but he's had a little rough go there for a while. But he goes over to Alicia's house there every year, makes the charity event, and of course he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and CAC and things like that. I mean, Don, do you remember? Since I got you on the phone here, when they had the Hall of Fame at the amphitheater in Chicago, and they used to go over to the Stockyard Inn next door.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was the 60s and early 70s. Blackjack Mulligan and I talk about that, and I know he always enjoyed the the Hall of Fame, and then going over to the the Stockyard Inn there, and you could have dinner.
I know. The Stockyard.
Yeah, remember? Yeah, they'd have guys. Well, they'd always have guys like Moose Cholak up there and Wilbur, and So it was, Christie was up there a lot, and so it was a good time, good era in Chicago. I think wrestling. I know a lot of places say they're the wrestling capital of the world, but when you go back to the Rainbow Arena and the Marigold.
Me and Jackie wrestled the Rainbow Arena, and the guy that ran Australia,
Barnett.
Yeah, Barnett. He was the program guy. He made programs and stuff like that when he was there in that office.
When did Kohler kind of drop out of that, or he was there in the 50s and early 60s, wasn't he, Fred Kohler?
Yeah. He started to pull out towards the end.
When did Vern hands on Chicago, or when did he kind of take over there?
The what?
When did Vern Gagne kind of get involved in the Chicago operation?
Well, me and Jackie were there in '58, I think it was.
Kohler was still there then?
Yeah, Kohler was there. Vern Gagne was wrestling there, and so was Dick the Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder. They were all wrestling there. A lot of big
Schmidt,
names.
Some of those guys.
Yeah. Schmidt was there. All of them were there. And that was a big thing, McMahon was like the first one. He ain't the first guy that did this. That was national-wide hookup.
Yeah, that's what my dad told me. Kohler was like one of the heavyweights at that time, I guess.
If you got to work for him, he was getting on top fast, because you just didn't work in one little territory. You went all over. But they would send me and Jackie the plane tickets from Nashville to Chicago. They sent us the plane tickets. Back in them days, you could cash the plane tickets in, but we'd cash the plane tickets in, get in the Cadillac, get our beer and whatever else we needed, and bingo, we'd take off for Chicago and keep the money.
Hey guys, we have just got so close. We're about 12, 13 minutes out of the end of this show.
Okay, man.
I'm going to start letting everybody get out of here one person at a time. Bob, let's say our final goodbyes, and we'll say goodnight to you tonight.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys, for having me on. And Don, just a real pleasure to hear your voice again. And
you bet.
We'll hopefully see everybody out at CAC. Lord Zoltan, we'll see you soon.
Okay, Bob.
Okay,
good night, Bob.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bob. I'll look forward to having you on again soon. And all the best.
All right, Lord Zoltan, let's get our final good nights in here tonight, buddy.
Yeah, nice talking with you guys. May I come back sometime and talk about the Hall of Fame up in Amsterdam, New York, and things around Pittsburgh, and it was just so interesting hearing everything, on Don. I got his book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I want to get right into it because he's always one of my favorites here in Pittsburgh. And I just wish he was here a lot, more than he, when he was in his early career.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I look forward to. I'll get a hold of you, Ken or Lord. I don't know what you call it, but yeah, I'd like to. Give my best to Bruno and Dom DiNucci, and I'm looking forward to having some of those Pittsburgh guys on. And do you ever see Bill Eadie down there? Is he still in that part of the country?
He's living down in Georgia, but he still is. He's originally from south of Pittsburgh here, so he still has some.
Is that Newton Tatry still around, or is
he passed away a few years back?
Yeah, there was a lot of pretty prominent guys from Pittsburgh that kind of seemed to be a hotbed for a while there. So, but yeah, I'll be in touch, and I'll look forward to talking to you.
Hey, you guys have a nice Thanksgiving there too.
All right, you too. Oh yeah, you too, man. Good talking to you.
Hey guys,
thank you. Good night. All right, Lord Zoltan, Ken Jurgen, what a great guy. I've had an opportunity to be with him and visit with him up in Amsterdam and New York at the Hall of Fame, and yes, definitely Bruce will have him back on. And we'll get to talk about that here in the very near future. Bruce, I'm gonna turn the floor over to Don Fargo, the Hall of Famer, the legend. I was honored to meet him as an 18-year-old kid, and then to get to see him again a year ago at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame when he was so deservedly inducted into the Hall of Fame with Jackie and Don. We're 10 minutes from the end of the show, so we'd sure like for you to make some final comments tonight and a couple little plugs for your book, and thank you so much for being on with us.
All right, thank you. I just want to say I want to thank everybody and appreciate very much for being voted into the Hall of Fame. It's I always thought, as a matter of fact, I told Scott Teal, I said, don't put my book out until I get my ring. I said, they might change their mind. And so we did. But and man, I just loved it up there. I get to see everybody, and the Hall of Fame really blew my mind. I could spend all day there just looking at everything, and I appreciate everything everybody's done for me. And I wouldn't have, did everything I did if I didn't have the guys that I had to put me there. They did the job for me, and they made me pretty damn good too. It takes more than just one guy. And,
to your credit, Don, you did a lot for a lot of guys, including Valentine and all that. I've heard so many guys,
and I want to say one thing. I want to say one more thing, because I was sure glad to see you there in New York. I mean, that was a big thing to me, because your dad really meant a lot to me, and I see you and just everything come back. And I love that, man. And I got that picture. Remember the picture me and you took hooking up? Yeah, I got that, and I blew it up real big. It's me and you hooking up there, man.
Hey, well, Don, I know you're painting your next caricature with. You told me the other day you're working on a caricature with Butcher Vachon.
Yeah.
I know mine hangs proudly in my house, and all my friends come over. They love me and the horse and all the injuries, and again, to me it's an honor to be on the air, to be with you in person, because you are one of the living legends of this business. And you came from a golden era, which was the tough time to be in this business, and you survived it and made it, and you're part of the history. And all these young guys that have the opportunity to be around you at some of these independent shows, if they don't take advantage of that time of being around you to gain what knowledge they can, shame on them for not getting that opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, man. And I just want to say God bless all you guys, and I hope to see you again, and I'm hoping to go to Vegas next year. I want to go there real bad. 50th anniversary. I guess you all know that.
Yeah,
Don, I said, Don, if you're going to drive out to Vegas and you got to come through Texas, you got a place to stay at my house, my friend.
Oh, man, I appreciate that a lot, brother. Thank you very much. And I keep wanting to say Stu. I'll just say Hart. It's been good talking to you, brother. And I wish you all a good Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and thanks for the memories, Don. I hope I can make it down to CAC, and that'd be great to visit with you and catch up. We just scratched the surface tonight.
Yeah,
you know, and,
I sure love that. I sure love that.
Don Fargo. I mean, there's just not much you can say when you say his name. You already know the stories and the legends, and of course, you know, like you said, all these great buildings that he sold out around the country, whether he was working as the Dalton Gang or the Fargo or whatever, however he was working, he was part of a lot of big nights in this business. And with those names he threw out tonight, did it make you think some of the stories like your dad would tell you, all those names he was throwing out?
Oh, yeah, he started talking about Ray Stevens and Dickie Steinborn and Chris Colt and Johnny Valentine and Jackie Fargo and all that bunch. You know, it's some legends in our business. You know, it's like a who's who list. So, you know, and he sort of transcended the, you know, from the 50s to the present. You're talking about over 60 years, you know, and still not that many guys around, unfortunately, that span that length of time and still sound of mind, and you know, can still, you know, kind of give you some perspective and some kind of interesting stories and stuff about all that, you know. So I'm hoping the listeners out there maybe comprehend you know, what his contribution to our business has been, you know, because he's been a legend. There's not too many guys that span that generation, from Buddy Rogers to the present, and Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. and Goulas and Welch and Barnett and Shires and, you know, Morris Siegel and Ed McLemore and Dory Sr. and Dory Jr. and Terry Funk and all like that, you know.
Had Dory Jr.'s first match. I mean, wow. I mean,
yeah, there's not too many. You know, anyone who's been around the business and knows the caliber of those guys. Those are like among the greatest workers ever. You know, the Dory Juniors and the Stevens and the Terrys and all those guys. You know, the Buddy Rogerses and you know, Dr. Jerry Graham and Argentina Rock. It's like. You know, very few guys I would venture to say that, you know, the common denomination between all of those guys, you know. So,
you know, you and I always seem like at the end of our shows, when I'm on here with you, we always go back to the same thing, and we talk about the caliber or the quality of people that came out of that sort of generation of guys and the ability that they had to pass or to hand that torch off to the next generation. And I'm wondering now if that torch is just going to fall to the ground and burn the forest up, or is there going to be some kind of change within the system so that
I think there needs
that
to be,
torch
if it's
can be
going to,
passed.
I think they need to, like you and I keep saying, somehow, and I'm not sure if it's possible, you need to reconstitute the business to where you got guys like Don Fargo and or Harley Races and Terry Funks and Ric Flairs and these Johnny Valentines and Buddy Rogerses, you know, these characters you keep hearing us talking about, because you don't like to be putting anybody down, but there's not that many guys of that caliber, you know, that personality, that charisma, that respect for the business, and that kind of, you know, all those intangibles. That there's not too many guys like that in the business today, and they need to somehow or other bring more of them in if the business is going to sustain itself or, you know, perpetuate itself to the next generation. I've been saying that for years. You know, at some point you got to kind of re-examine what it is and see what you can do to restore some of those things.
I'm going to get my little 2 cents worth in. I'm going to say, much like I did earlier, if you're listening to this show and you're a young guy or young girl in this business and you don't take something from Don, you're missing out, because tonight he mentioned Dickie Steinborn, and I'll never forget, as a junior high kid in Florida, I went down to spend the summer with my brother Ken. I met Dickie Steinborn, and he walked me to the front of the building, and he pointed up to the marquee, and he said, "See up there, kid, where it says wrestling? If we don't do some, they're not going to come back." And I think that's needed today. Bruce, that's my perspective of the night. You say your goodbyes, buddy, and we're out of here. God bless everybody. Thank you for listening to Heartbeat Radio.
Thanks, Johnny, and I'll look forward to next week. Have another great show next week, so I'll look forward to it, and thanks to everybody for coming on board. All the best, and God bless.